Hey folks, what's up? Welcome. Thanks for being here. Let's get into we're gonna get into a clip that has re-gone viral. It probably didn't go viral initially in 2001 because there were no viruses back in 2001. The internet existed, but most people couldn't download videos easily, so there wasn't a lot of video sharing going on. But this video, because of 9/11's anniversary, that was yesterday, has gone viral again. And it's a beautiful clip. It's amazing watching an icon like Chomsky just fucking rip mainstream media apart like to their face. It's beautiful. It's only like a minute long, so I'll play it in a second. Thank you for being here. Please take a second to share this to let people know. As most of you know, I am the most censored comedian in America. Television canceled by U.S. television show canceled by U.S. sanction. YouTube channel, my main YouTube channel, banned around the globe, around the entire globe. Like they were afraid somebody in Malta might fucking look up one of my videos and then their mind would be blown and they'd never be the same. And they'd walk around just muttering to themselves from there on out. So they had to ban it globally. Over 1,000 videos banned globally. And I see some of these other people that are like, I'm the most censored man on the YouTubes. And it's like they've had 5 videos taken down or something, or they were demonetized. And I'm like, dude, yeah, that's not good. I don't support that. But there's a little difference between having 5 videos taken down and your entire channel banned around the world. A bit of a difference. Also, my podcast banned by Spotify. But anyway, enough about that. Thanks for supporting me. Sorry about the cough. Still getting over it. Doing my best not to keep coughing in the mic for you. But I got a bunch of stories. I'm also going to show you the new episode of The Most Censored News, my new series. But to start out, please hit the thumbs up and leave a comment and all that stuff. Helps the robots inside the computer. It helps do war with them and their fucking algorithms. Their algorithms are always coming after me. Or actually, their algorithms want nothing to do with me. It's really that's the big problem. You're like the kid at the dance trying to get to the attention of the young ladies, and I can't do it. But anyway, so let's play this short clip of Noam Chomsky back in 2001, right after 9/11, and he was one of the few. He was one of the few that really and I wasn't politically awakened in 9/11. I knew nothing then. So I certainly wasn't on this list. He was one of the few that in 9/11, 9/11 happened and he was out front in weeks or maybe even days after saying, yeah, not cool, but let's also remember the fucking breathless murders, the endless murders that the U.S. has done around the world in a very similar manner to 9/11 done to other countries. Yeah, they didn't fly jets into buildings. Instead, they just bombed those buildings. Is there that much of a day? It's still a big metal thing hitting a building. Is there that much difference? One's a plane. Yeah, there's a bomb. And he was like, let's remember. And people lost their fucking minds. And I think this was also the last I think this was when they stopped having him on some mainstream media. Until 2001 or shortly thereafter, they would still have him occasionally on NPR and some of these others. And after this point, they were like, yeah, cut off the Chomsker. And Chomsky, these days, he is aggressively old. I don't know why he decided to do that. Why do you sit down and make that choice to get that old? I don't understand it. But anyway, that's not the problem, though. The problem is that he's moved a little more centrist, very slightly. And, it's frustrating to those of us who want that radical. But And he's still fairly radical compared to most mainstream analysis. And I still very much appreciate the guy because he helped wake me up. So even though he's moved a little more centrist, ever so slightly, and by centrist I mean he's moved 5 degrees closer to the Democrats as opposed to way off the left side of the scale, which is where human beings should be if you want to have a planet in a few years. Actually, there will be a planet in a few years. There just won't be any of us to observe that there's a planet in a few years. But anyway, but you know, we always wanted this hardcore radical, and he's still fairly awesome. But you know, I did one interview with him on Redacted Tonight like a year ago, and most of it was great. The final question I asked him, or I mentioned something about the two-party system being they agree on 80 to 90% of the structural issues of the country, so there really is no difference. And he changed his stance from what he used to say, and he said, well, that used to be true, but now it's not quite true. The Democrats are better or something like that. And I was like, I don't know about that. I think in many ways they're worse. I would never vote for a Republican. Let me clear that up. But I would never vote for a Democrat because the way you could, there's an easy argument to be made that they're worse because they actually get all the shit done. They are the ones that get the fucking trade deals through. They're the ones that usually give the massive tax cuts to the rich. They're the ones that are able to get through the doubling of the prison population and that kind of shit because people go, it's Democrats. It must be the good guys are doing it, so it must be good. But anyway, easy argument to make. But so here he is, and I know I've elongated this intro too long. Sorry. And I'm going to interrupt it a little because I want to, never mind. I don't need to tell you, but.
Rational. If we're rational.
A lot of irrational people out there.
I can't help that.
Hold on. And I know I'm going to interrupt this a lot, but trust me, it's worth it. So this is what an aggressive interview actually looks like. And they never do this against our fucking shit show politicians. This is what a true aggressive interviewer looks like. And he's a fucking idiot, but is picking apart every word you say and not letting you have a thought. That's what this guy's trying to do. Chomsky said, if we're rational about this, and the guy interrupts and goes, well, there's a lot of irrational people out there. And it's like, dude, who the fuck cares if there's a lot of irrational people out there? Do you not want to be rational? Chomsky said, if we're rational about this, and the guy interrupts, what about all the irrational people? Oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot about them. Let's do what they're doing. Let's be irrational. Now, you fucking idiot. He said, let's be rational about this, and you interrupted that? That's a problem? You can't even handle that statement? Ugh.
If we're rational, we will recognize that the United States, Britain, France, and I can go down a long list, have a terrible record of atrocities, and that does not justify violent acts against them.
But you seem to see this moral equivalence the whole
There's
time
no
between
moral
Bin Laden.
Now, let me just pause there because nothing Chomsky just said is even mildly incorrect or even arguable. He said Western countries, France, Britain, United States, have a laundry list of fucking atrocities. I mean, it's just horrific shit. In North Korea, in the Korean War, we killed a third of their population. In Vietnam, the fight was not to gain land, but just to see how many of them we could kill. And then we would take a hill, kill as many as we could, and then leave that hill after a few hours or a day. Because taking land was not part of the plan. The plan was just to see how many you could kill. What? I mean, the atrocity, of course, that's just two examples. And then, this is 2001, this interview, so unbeknownst to them, they were at the beginning of 20 years of massacre by the United States called the War on Terror that has killed 6 million people. Those are the latest estimates, 6 million people. And so, of course, nothing Chomsky has said is even arguable. And then this guy's like, well, you want to make a moral equivalence. So, all right, let's keep going.
Laden and Bush.
moral
Don't you?
atrocities, and that does not justify violent acts against them.
But you seem to see this moral equivalence the whole
There's no
time between bin Laden and Bush.
moral equivalence is a term of propaganda that was invented to try to prevent us from looking at what the acts for which we are responsible.
You say there are plenty.
Again, great point from Chomsky here. The guy doesn't actually want to hear what Chomsky just said, which is the U.S. and Britain and France have a laundry list of aggressive massacres, just awful, awful shit. And he doesn't want to hear that. So rather than take that in and discuss it, he wants to cut off the discussion by going, "You make a moral equivalence." And he's like, I'm not making a moral equivalence, which is a term that's just used to shut down discussion.
Equivalence is a term of propaganda that was invented to try to prevent us from looking at what the acts for which we are responsible.
You say there are plenty of bin Ladens on both sides.
Pardon?
You say there are plenty of bin Ladens,
there are bin Ladens all over the world.
On both sides. That's a moral equivalence.
No, it's not.
Polemic.
It's not moral equivalence. There is no such notion. There are many different dimensions and criteria. For example, there's no moral equivalence between
You said that. You said there were bin Ladens on both sides. And he's like, yeah, there's bin Ladens all over the world. If you mean killers, if you mean people that view killing a bunch of innocent people as useful to making their point, and who's going to argue that that type of human being doesn't exist around the world? And so you look at the laundry list of horrific shit the United States has done, and is that arguable? No. So the guy wants to shut down this discussion. He doesn't want you to actually. He doesn't want Chomsky to actually be able to say these things. So he tries to essentially change the subject or cut it off.
The bombing of the World Trade Center. No, it's not.
Polemic.
It's not moral equivalence. There is no such notion. There are many different dimensions and criteria. For example, there's no moral equivalence between the bombing of the World Trade Center and the destruction of Nicaragua or of El Salvador, of Guatemala. The latter were far worse by any criterion. So there's no moral equivalence. Furthermore, they were done for different reasons.
And this fucking mainstream media clown, who I think is, I don't see any branding, but I think this is maybe NPR, but could also be BBC. But, you know, Chomsky made a point there that the guy had no answer to, which is, Chomsky's like, well, it's moral equivalence is a stupid term, but if you really want to go down that path, then there's no moral equivalence between the fucking horrors that we've done, the millions we've killed. And, you know, he lists a couple of examples, which the guy then tries to pick apart. But he just, the guy's no answer to that. Oh yeah, the 9/11 killed what, 3,000 people. The U.S., like I said, in North Korea killed a third of their population. Literally ran out of targets to bomb. If you look at other examples, all of our fucking wars and coups and that we've caused, and obviously you go back to slavery, that fucking crime against humanity, the dropping of the atomic bombs. I did an episode of Government Secrets, my other podcast, Government Secrets. We did an episode, or maybe it was 2 episodes, on how the atomic bombs didn't need to be dropped. The fucking war was over. Japan was giving all signals that they were ready to surrender. All they wanted was to not lose their emperor. And they said, we'll do anything. Just, we'll fucking surrender, give in to all your requests. And we chose to ignore all of that because we wanted to test the bombs and we wanted to show the Soviet Union that we had that ability. So we then fucking set fire to hundreds of thousands of people, completely innocent people, just to go, look, we can do this. So yeah, that's not, there's really no moral equivalence there, is there?
and they were done in different ways. There's all sorts of dimensions.
But why, when the U.S. is considering what to do about this, do you always go back to past?
Not past,
crimes.
Present.
Proceed. Well, present. You mentioned Nicaragua.
I mentioned that because it's uncontroversial, since there's a World Court and Security Council resolution. But I can take you to cases, since it's uncontroversial, that's a good example. I mentioned these cases.
Are you kicking the U.S. when?
Well, hold on. I'll play that next part in a second. But so now the guy's saying, well, why is the U.S. thinks about what to do about this? Why is the U.S. plans to obliterate another country, whether it be Iraq or Afghanistan or whoever we are going to bomb for 9/11? Why do you insist on bringing up old ancient moments in history? And Chomsky says, no, these are current day. The U.S. is still killing people. Current day. Now, keep in mind, in this 2001, 9/11, the first Iraq War had already happened, where we obliterated people for that. And that's the famous quote from Madeleine Albright, who was Secretary of State under Clinton. And she was asked, she said, we killed 500,000, 500,000 children. Children. I'm going to say it one more time. Children in Iraq. How do you feel it was worth it? And this is the first Iraq War. And Madeleine Albright says, we feel it was worth it. 500,000 children. Compare that to the 3,000 that died in 9/11, which is still a tragedy, but let's keep these things in mind. And so Chomsky's point is this: when you're discussing what a country like that is willing to kill 500,000 children, just to make a little point, and here's the deeper reasoning that you will not get from even most other independent media outlets. Why did the U.S. go after Iraq, really? Both in the first Iraq War and the second Iraq War? Because Iraq was threatening. Yes, Iraq has oil, but the reason we didn't end up stealing that much of their oil, the reason their oil is important is because they were stepping outside of the petrodollar. They were both threatening and then went ahead and did drop the dollar in oil sales. Now, why is that so important to us? Because gold doesn't back our currency anymore. So why is the U.S. currency powerful? It's powerful because it's backed by petro. It's backed by petroleum. This is a deal made in the 1970s. It was an idea come up by that Henry Kissinger came up with to, okay, we're not going to back our currency with gold anymore, but it will still get its power from petroleum if we get OPEC and Saudi Arabia to agree to do all their oil sales in dollars, U.S. dollars. So that's why we can print all the money we want, and that money still has power because it's sought after because of the petrodollar. Now, Iraq and Libya and Syria and various other countries or moments in countries, they have either signals that they were going to go outside of the petrodollar, meaning we're not going to sell oil and take and receive oil in dollars anymore. We're going to go to something else. In Libya, the Gaddafi wanted to come up with the gold dinar. The African gold dinar was his plan. And we saw what we did to them, right? They fucking had him murdered in the streets and turned that country into a fucking warring warlords. So that is the real reason for our attacks on Iraq. And as we saw with 9/11, we used it as a justification to invade Iraq, even though Iraq had exactly zero to do with 9/11. So now this 2001 clip, Chomsky couldn't have known all that because it hadn't happened. Much of it hadn't happened yet. But why are these things? This guy's asking, why are these things? Why are these moments of the U.S. attacking other countries important to 2001 and the war on terror that was beginning right then? And Chomsky's like, well, or Chomsky's larger point in some ways is this is a pattern of behavior by the United States. And it should be considered when the United States, no matter what the cause was, no matter what shock led to this shock doctrine moment, we should consider these things when the U.S. is planning to obliterate another country. And of course, this guy can't handle that. because it's his job not to, right? His job was to have Chomsky on. And like I said, this is all very revealing of the mainstream media, because the mainstream media, this is how they behave. They are the white blood cells attacking an infection. An infection is someone telling the truth. Chomsky in this moment is telling the truth. That makes him an infection to the system, an infection to the capitalist petrodollar system. And so this guy, this fucking clown, and the mainstream media in general, writ large, is they behave like white blood cells, and they attack the infection, which in this case is Chomsky. In my case, was me, and you know, I was the infection, which is why my show had to be shut down, and you know, many others on RT America, like Chris Hedges and Jesse Ventura, and you know, we had to be shut down or censored largely. You know, Assange obviously was one of the biggest infections to the system because he was revealing truth in a much larger way. Actually, I'm gonna get back to Assange in a minute. But okay, let's finish this clip up.
That's a good example. I mentioned these cases.
Are you kicking the U.S. when it's down?
No, I'm asking that we...
Oh, God. That comment is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my goddamn life. By revealing the truth, by revealing our reality that we sit in, that the mainstream media will never fucking mention, are you kicking the U.S. while we're down? Are you allowed to tell the truth while the U.S. after the U.S. has been attacked? Like, oh, fuck yourself, dude.
That we accept the definition of hypocrite given in the Gospels. I think that's correct. The hypocrite is the person who refuses to apply to himself the standards he applies to others. I don't think we should be hypocrites.
To what aim do you do this? To what aim?
Oh my God. Imagine if Chomsky weren't talking about the United States, but was talking about some other news story. So imagine if he were talking about Bill Cosby. And he's like, not only is Bill Cosby a disgusting rapist, but he's a hypocrite. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that this guy is both a rapist and a hypocrite, because one of Cosby's thing was he used to go on talk shows and everything and tell, you know, he was specifically talking to black people, but, you know, I guess it doesn't matter in a sense, but he was saying young black people need to behave themselves. They need to act better. They need to pull their pants up. This was from Cosby. And it was like, meanwhile, he's literally raping people. And so imagine if Chomsky were doing an interview and he was like, Cosby's a rapist and a hypocrite. And this guy were like, to what aim are you saying these things about Bill Cosby? Why would you call him a hypocrite right now while he's facing a trial? Why would you call him a hypocrite? Are you kicking a man while he's down? Like, if it were done in that circumstance, everyone would instantly be like, what the fuck's the matter with this guy? But instead, because it's the U.S., rah, 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 America, patriotism, flag tattooed on the ass, people go, they hear that and they go, yeah, don't kick America while we're down. Meanie.
Do you wish to point this out?
Because I think we should try to rise to the level of minimal moral integrity. Once we can rise to the level of minimal moral integrity, then we can discuss these issues seriously. If we can't even rise to that level, there's any point to talking. Minimal moral integrity requires that if we think something is wrong when they do it, it's wrong when we do it rationally.
I love that line. That was just like, that was the debate version of just fucking punching the guy in the face, and he's already like dizzy, like, and he's like, minimal moral integrity. Ah, that was so beautiful. And that guy had no answer. He was just like, just could you please stop saying minimal moral integrity at me? Because it's really, oh God, stop saying minimal moral integrity, please. His head snaps back over and over again. Oh, it reminds me of the only time I've seen something that beautiful done in a mainstream outlet before was when Cornel West was, because Bernie Sanders had done so well in the primary and they had to rig it against him in order to beat him. But they ultimately got him to concede. And one of the offers that they gave him to concede was that he'd have people on the Democrats platform committee to decide what the Democratic platform is, which is fucking hilarious because the Democratic platform is meaningless. Like, they can put things on it. Hey, I'm going to write on the Democratic platform that we care about climate change. I'm writing it right here. Can you see? Look, this imaginary whiteboard is right. It's right here. I'm writing it down. The platform is meaningless. Fucking wildly meaningless. But so anyway, because Bernie Sanders was able to extract at least that promise from them, that quasi-meaningless promise from them, Cornel West was on the platform committee. And there was a moment in the platform committee where they have to vote to send each set of to move the platform along in the process. They vote as a group, and they try to make the voting anonymous, but not anonymous, unanimous. They try to make the voting unanimous because that looks good, right? Everybody agreed on these tenets to the DNC platform. And so one of the ones that they had debated, but they ultimately did not put it in there, is that the Democrats gave a shit about Palestinians. They were able to extract that out when Cornel West or someone else had put it in there. And so it wasn't in there. And so Cornel West voted against moving the platform forward. And they tried to talk him out of it. And so you see the guy, I don't remember who it was, but you see the guy talking to him, and they're sitting at a big table. And they're like, you got to understand, this is not the final platform. We're just voting to move it to the next step. Like, if you don't just ignore the fact that Palestinian cause has been ripped out of it and just move it along. But so we're just voting to move it along. And Cornel West gives this short speech where he goes, listen, no offense to everyone here, but if we can't even talk about the Palestinian cause, if we can't even talk about, and he said some other things, apartheid, if we can't even talk about our oppressed brothers and sisters in Palestine, then I cannot vote to move this platform forward. And that is no offense to everybody else here. That is none offense intended. But that's not how I was raised. That's not the moral beliefs I was raised with. And that is no offense to anyone else here. And it was so amazing because everybody else there is like, I think he means offense to everyone else here. And Cornel West has this beautiful way of being like, this is not an accusation against any of you all. But of course it is. I wasn't raised this way, but fucking you were. Of course it is. So beautiful. Anyway, so that was him just fucking beating them down as he voted against the platform, which ultimately was, as I said, meaningless anyway. But so I wanted you to see that. All hail the previously radical Chomsky, whose books throughout his career are all still incredibly priceless in terms of information, even if there's a few things nowadays that I may have qualms with. But, you can't. It's like an athlete. You can't expect him to be in his last years. He's not going to have quite the game he had in the early times, right? Fucking, he's still swinging for the fences some of the time. Rafael Nadal is still winning occasional grand slams. But when you see him out there, he doesn't have quite the spark. There's not quite the fucking, but what do you want from the guy? He's played 9 billion hours, Chomsky's been out on the court. He's been out in the field fucking playing for 90 years. So anyway, that clip has gone viral. I want to say again, but I assume it didn't go viral when it first came out because 2001, back in 2001, to download just a single photo of tits, which was what I was generally downloading back then. I didn't say I'm not trying to be gender normative or whatever. I didn't say male or female tits. Could have been a montage of all kinds of tits. Anyway, just to download that, you remember it would come down in chunks. You just get like, and then 5 minutes would go by, and you were like, could you get to the nipple? But anyway, incredibly important video. And isn't it amazing how times haven't changed at all? Like, you could have that same conversation today about 9/11 on mainstream media, and if they ever aired it, which they wouldn't, but if they ever showed something like that, it would be the exact same shit. It would be Chomsky or whoever, Hedges, saying those points, and some mainstream media clown paid by fucking big pharma, big oil, big ag going, aren't you kicking America while we're down? All that bullshit. All right, so that took longer than I thought it would take, but let's move on to the next topic. In a few minutes, I'll try and get through one more topic, but in a few minutes, we're going to go to only rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to watch over there. If you're watching over there right now, nothing changes. And you can see the rest of the episode there. And some of you might want to know why I do that. Well, like I mentioned, I'm the most sensitive comedian in America. My main YouTube channel is banned around the globe, 1,000 videos banned. So I had to go to somewhere that would not ban my videos. Simple as that. So, and I have stories coming up on, I'm going to show you the new episode of Most Censored News, my new show. I'm also going to show some activism moments that are pretty fucking cool. People getting everyone's panties in a bunch, which I'm a big fan of. Male or female panties. Okay? Don't email me about how offensive it is to say panties in a bunch. Maybe there's some men out there who enjoy wearing panties and they get theirs in a bunch. Yeah. Think about your own prejudice, all right? First, before you come at me. You acted like only women wear panties. How offensive of you. Who the fuck do you think you are with your panty apartheid? Oh, you and your panty apartheid. I cannot handle it. Someone in the comment thread says Lee is wearing panties. I was earlier, but I'm going commando just for you guys, okay? Took off the panties, letting it all hang out, as they say. I am anti-limited hangout. I go full hangout. Anyway, so this doesn't need a long analysis. It's so fucking emblematic of what the U.S. government is, what we do, what we are. It's goddamn pathetic. And it just shows exactly how we behave even when a country is in need, even when a country is not wronging us, but fucking in need. So Pakistan is like a third underwater. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like a third underwater. Literally whole villages gone. It's horrific. And it's climate crisis. And many of us, here's another thing. I like to give you little tips on how you should stop listening to other shows or other commentators or other whatever. And I don't like to get into the tit for tat, this guy said, that guy said bullshit, because I think you do that and you kind of have lost the thread. You make that your life. I'm in a Twitter battle with Benedict, but that gets hits, so everyone does it. Anyway, but I like to give you little factors you should look into, and it's a good way to know whether you should fucking not listen to these people anymore. If they haven't been talking about climate crisis and climate change and global warming, whatever terminology they felt like using at the time, if they've been talking about that for at least a decade, unless they're 23 years old. But if they're over 30 and they haven't been talking about that shit for at least a decade, then you should stop listening to them, because clearly they're incapable of seeing the writing on the wall, of predicting the future, judging by current facts, of seeing where things are headed, of looking at the science. And if incapable of doing that, then you probably don't need to be listening to them. So minimum 10 years, honestly. Maybe 9 if you think they're funny. If they make you laugh, 9 years. Other than that, 10 years minimum talking about climate crisis. All right. So Pakistan's underwater. Incredibly awful there. And here's Steven Simler. He does articles with data analysis that's amazing. And they're all, if you want to get all his stuff, it's at radindiemedia.com, RADINDIE media.com, completely free to read stuff over there. Steven Simler shows the State Department press release. And he says the State Department saw the devastating floods in Pakistan and responded by approving $450 million of weapons to them, selling weapons for $500 million. And here's the press release from the State Department. September 7, 2022, the State Department has made a determination approving a possible foreign military sale to the government of Pakistan of F-16 case for sustainment and related equipment for an estimated cost of $450 million. There you go. We're selling them weapons to deal with their climate crisis. Here's what you can do is if you take the F-16 and you duct tape the windows closed, then it will float. If you were to put a bunch of those on top of each other, you could have a floating structure of sorts. So if we sell them, 15 F-16s, then they could duct tape those together and live inside of those as they float on the new water Pakistan. Now, water Pakistan is going to be a little different, but a little dicey. But you can have a floating F-16 structure. That's one thing you can do. We're giving them grenade launchers that you can use to, those boats where you stick a stick in the water and you that's how you go. It's like they use them in Venice or Italy or some shit. You can use a grenade launcher as that stick to make the boat go. So we give them a bunch of grenade launchers and they stick that in the water and they can, push themselves forward on the new water world that they're very excited about in Pakistan. Oh my God. Selling them fucking $500 million of weapons to deal with the fact that their country's underwater. That'll help. That'll do it. Thank you, State Department. Always there. Always there when we need you. All right, so I want to move into some of the activism that two big activist moments that have happened in the past few days. And I like to do this for a few reasons, even if it's a smaller event, smaller activity or whatever, because they often get such little media coverage. And I think it's important to highlight these things because we live in a system where voting is something you should do, but it is borderline meaningless, especially on the federal level. So do it because there's nothing the corporate elite would love more than for all of you to sit home and not vote. But if you want real change to happen, it needs to happen in a myriad other ways. And some of those are activism that interrupts business as usual. And get creative with it. There's a lot of ways to be active in some manner that interrupts business as usual. Not all of it is going to get you goddamn 35 years in prison. So, it can have multiple impacts because it has the impact of interrupting business as usual, has the impact often of getting more media coverage because that gets talked about. It has the impact of even if, there's these people that block weapons contractors, they'll block off the road and the weapons contractor will have to shut down for the day because there's no way to get into the weapons manufacturer building. and they'll cut off weapon sales for a day. And it's like, yeah, it's just a day, but that's a day that fucking missiles and shit that kill children are not being shipped out. That child's going to live one more day, get to enjoy existence one more day because you blocked that roadway. So it's stuff like that, yeah, may seem small, but I think it's impactful. And then, of course, there's much larger ones that interrupt business as usual. Someone said general strike. I'm all for that, although that a general strike takes a lot of organizing. So, and you know, I think organizers are the most powerful, impressive people in the world. I don't consider myself one, and I think it's sometimes a bit like grandiose or I don't know, naive for a commentator online to just keep yelling general strike without the organizing aspect. So I think organizers should definitely work on something like that. But of course, there are many strikes on much smaller levels that have big impacts. All right, so here's a couple of actions that have interrupted business as usual. We were just talking about the climate crisis and how a third of Pakistan's underwater. And here is, and this, I was kind of shocked because this is actually covered by The Guardian. The Guardian used to be a pretty damn good media outlet. It was captured by corporate interests in roughly 2014, around then. And it's been largely a shit show, just a propaganda outlet since then. However, occasionally they trip and fall into real news accidentally. Like they're running to do some State Department talking point, like the United States has never done anything wrong, and why is Russia not like us? And it's an article like that, and then they trip on something, and they're like, and they fall into a story that actually matters and is accurate. I don't know what they leave around the newsroom that they're tripping on. It doesn't happen often. So they fall face first into some actual accurate news that could be important. So here they are. This is The Guardian talking about tire extinguishers, and they spell it wrong because they're British, I think. Is that, do the Brits really spell tire with a Y? Or is that just the name of the group? No? Yeah, they actually spell tires with a Y. What the fuck? That's pretty weird. That's even weird for the Brits. I mean, yeah. There are other things I get. Most of the other spellings, it's like they're going with the old way. Theater with the R-E at the end. All right. I get it. But T-Y-R-E? I don't know. Because tires aren't even that old of a thing. Right? There wasn't. I don't think Shakespeare was talking about tires. Anyway. Tire extinguishers claim more than 600 SUVs disarmed in one night. And here's the thing. I know some people are like, fuck that, man. I got an SUV. But it's like, dude, what do you want people to do? We're literally setting the world on fire. Like, activism as a whole should be growing to every segment of our society in a large way. And I'm just celebrating fucking anything. Like, even if I personally had an SUV, I don't have a car, but even if I personally had an SUV, I'd be like, yeah, but I probably shouldn't. These guys are probably right. Like, like if I were getting ready to take a flight and they ran out on the tarmac and fucking let the air out of the flight tires, I'd be pissed that I was going to show up late, but I'd be like, but they're right. Yeah, they're right. That we can't just keep destroying the world. It's like if they stop a lumber factory from fucking knocking down 1,000 trees And if I worked there, I'd be like, this kind of sucks. We don't get to knock down trees today, but probably shouldn't be knocking down all these trees. Like, you can understand both sides, I feel like. The climate activist group, the Tire Extinguishers, has claimed its largest night of action yet against SUVs with more than 600 vehicles disarmed across 9 countries over the night, marking 6 months since the launch of the campaign, which encourages people to covertly deflate the tires of SUVs. Activists took action in the UK, France, Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Norway, Denmark, the Czech Republic, and Canada. And here's a quote from their press release. Courageous citizens all over the world last night deflated tires on at least 600 SUVs. And the movement has now deflated tires on around 9,000 SUVs in cities across the world since March, striking continuously and look set to pass their goal of 10,000 SUVs deflated by Christmas, the statement says. The group has said its aim is to make it impossible to own an SUV in the world's urban areas, condemning the vehicles as unnecessary luxury emissions flaunted by the wealthy that are a climate disaster, cause air pollution, and make our roads more dangerous. It points to research published in 2019 by the International Energy Agency that found SUVs were the second largest cause of the global rise in carbon dioxide emissions over the past decade. And this has a lot to do with the way the Western world lives, because most people owning an SUV is not a rich thing. Like, it's not like everybody with SUV, especially those leasing one, have tons of money. But it has to do with the way the Western world lives. And, I, of course, include myself in that. Living in the United States, you are going to live a certain way for the most part, unless you live in a cabin in the woods. And I think we should probably be reanalyzing the way this shit works. And that doesn't mean we should all be in a cabin in the woods. It means that we need to change our systems. And clearly, our politicians, who are all sociopaths and all owned by corporate America, they're not going to do anything. So it's about interrupting business as usual, making people think about this, making people actually deal with this. The time for talk, and unfortunately, I'm a talker, but the time for talk seems to be quickly going by the wayside, which sucks because I like talking. But I think that those of us that are, and by the way, the other streams are going to cut off now, and we're going to keep going on rumble.com/Lee Camp. So please join me there, completely free to join me there. And I'm going to show you the new episode of The Most Censored News, my new show. But I think you need to encourage